In an isolated mansion, a widowed father lives in silence alongside his daughter, who since birth has been considered completely blind. But everything begins to change with the arrival of a new employee, marked by the pain of loss, who notices signs that had been overlooked for years. While discreetly testing lights and shapes, she witnesses something impossible. The girl blinks, points, and says she saw a light. This discovery triggers an investigation that exposes dark medical secrets and rekindles the child's life, her eyes, and her future. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. The Vance mansion reigned imposingly over the cliff in Newport Bay. With its 3 glass and marble floors, the construction seemed to float between the blue sky and the green of the Atlantic rainforest that embraced it from all sides. Access was restricted. After passing through the control of the high-luxury gated community, it was still necessary to travel 2 miles of private road to the property's electronic gates. For the few residents of that exclusive piece of paradise, the house was known as the Dark Lighthouse, a silent irony that Richard Vance, at 45, preferred to ignore. The nickname had emerged years ago when the news spread. The only daughter of the powerful technology entrepreneur was born completely blind. That spring morning, Richard watched the sea from the main balcony. He wore his usual white linen suit, contrasting with his tanned skin and the graying hair at his temples. His angular face maintained the distant expression that had become his trademark since the tragic accident. "Daddy?" The childish voice echoed through the glass doors. "Are you out there?" Richard spun on his heels, his expression instantly transforming. "I am, Princess. Come, the wind is lovely today." Sophia Vance, 7 years old, with honey-colored curly hair and light blue eyes that seemed to fix on nothing, advanced with careful steps, her small hands extended forward. She carried, as always, a teddy bear faded from constant use. "Mrs. Matilda said you were sad today," Sophia spoke, referring to the housekeeper who had worked in the mansion since before her birth. "Is it true, Daddy?" Richard swallowed hard. It was the 8th anniversary of the plane crash that took Beatrice, his wife, just 5 days after Sophia's birth. The emptiness he felt was like a wound that never fully healed, but he didn't want to transmit that pain to his daughter. "I'm just thoughtful, my love." He knelt to be at the girl's height and adjusted a lock of hair that fell over her forehead. "It's almost time for your piano tutorial. Do you want me to walk you to the music room?" Sophia hugged the bear tighter against her chest. "I can go alone. I've already memorized the way." Indeed, the girl had memorized every inch of that house. It was impressive how she managed to move unaided through the main rooms, something experts attributed to the sharpened development of her other senses. "Then go." Aunt Carmen must be waiting. Richard watched his daughter walk away with slow but sure steps. When Sophia disappeared into the house, he turned back to the sea. The technology empire he had built, Vance Tech, required little of his physical presence in recent years. After the accident, he had reorganized his entire life to dedicate himself almost exclusively to his daughter. He had consulted the best specialists in the world, implemented experimental treatments, and hired private tutors for every subject. In the library converted into an office, the phone rang 3 times before Richard answered. "Mr. Vance?" Mrs. Matilda's voice sounded formal, as always. "The candidate for the companion position has arrived. I'll be right down." In the last 6 months, 3 companions had come and gone. None had stayed. Richard was demanding, and Sophia's routine required someone with special sensitivity. After Mrs. Martha, the last companion, retired due to health problems after 5 years of dedication, finding a suitable replacement seemed impossible. In the spacious entrance hall, a young woman of approximately 30 awaited, sitting on the edge of the Italian leather sofa. She was dressed simply, dark jeans, a white cotton shirt, and flats. Her black hair was tied in a low bun, and her face, without makeup, revealed deep dark circles under her eyes. "Teresa Oliver." Richard extended his hand in a formal greeting. "Yes, sir." She quickly stood up, her gaze fixed, her posture erect. "Thank you for the opportunity. Please, have a seat." Richard took the armchair opposite, analyzing the printed resume. "I see you worked as a nurse at the New Haven Children's Hospital for 8 years. Why the career change?" A brief flicker of pain crossed Teresa's gaze. soon replaced by determination. I needed a break from the hospital routine. Mr. Vance, but my vocation is still caring for others. Richard noticed she was omitting something but didn't press. Her resume was impeccable, and her references excellent. Mrs. Matilda must have already explained that Sophia has specific needs. He put the papers aside. We believe she was born with total blindness. She has never shown any light perception or reaction to visual stimuli. Our daily life is organized to provide her with the maximum possible autonomy, but within a predictable routine. I understand perfectly, Teresa nodded. I read a lot about sensory development in visually impaired children during my training. Environmental predictability is fundamental. Exactly. Sophia has daily private lessons, music, math, history, literature. Between sessions, she needs supervision for her free activities and assistance with medication. The eye drops are administered 3 times a day, strictly following the schedules and dosages prescribed by Dr. Henry. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes. Richard explained every detail of the routine, Sophia's preferences and specific care needs. Teresa listened attentively, asking precise questions that demonstrated technical knowledge and sensitivity. When could you start? Richard finally asked. Immediately, if convenient, Teresa replied without hesitation. I'm staying in Newport and have full availability. Excellent. The companion's room is in the East Wing near Sophia's. Mrs. Matilda will show you the facilities and everything you need. Richard stood up, indicating the interview was concluded. We'll start with a 2-week trial period. If all goes well, we'll formalize the contract. I appreciate your trust. Teresa also stood. I promise to do my best for your daughter. That same afternoon, Teresa met Sophia. The girl was in the music room, sitting at the piano, plucking loose notes without truly playing a melody. Carmen, the music teacher, had just left. Sophia? Teresa called softly from the doorway. May I come in? I'm Teresa, your new companion. The girl turned her face towards the voice, her blue eyes fixed on an indeterminate point. She hugged the teddy bear tighter. Is Mrs. Martha not coming back? She needed to rest, remember? Your dad told me you already talked about it. Teresa approached slowly, keeping her voice calm. May I sit near you? Sophia nodded affirmatively. Teresa sat on the piano bench at a respectful distance. You play very well, she commented, noticing the Braille sheet music on the piano. I wasn't really playing, Sophia replied, running her fingers over the keys. Just feeling. I understand. Sometimes I also like to feel things without really using them. A comfortable silence settled between them. Teresa didn't try to force conversation, just remained there present. What does your voice sound like when you smile? Sophia asked suddenly. The question caught Teresa by surprise. What do you mean? Daddy says people have a different voice when they smile. That you can tell even without seeing. Teresa smiled genuinely for the first time that day, like this. Do you hear the difference? Sophia tilted her head slightly, as if analyzing the sound. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled too. I like your smiling voice, she declared, extending her hand towards Teresa. Do you want to meet Bernard? She offered the teddy bear. It would be a pleasure. Teresa accepted the toy ceremoniously. Hello, Bernard. Nice to meet you. From his position at the door, observing without interfering, Richard Vance felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time, a faint glimmer of hope. Chapter 2. Small Discoveries. 2 weeks had passed since Teresa's arrival at the Vance mansion. The adjustment period had gone better than expected. Sophia, usually reserved with strangers, had shown surprising acceptance of her new companion. Richard, satisfied with the initial results, formalized the employment contract. The household routine maintained its measured pace. In the morning, after breakfast served promptly at 7 o'clock, Sophia had language and math lessons with Professor Paul, an educator specializing in inclusive education. At noon, she had lunch in her father's company when he wasn't on video conferences. Afternoons were dedicated to more playful activities. Music on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. Sensory therapy on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That Tuesday, the sky had dawned particularly clear. Sunlight flooded the rooms of the house through the large windows, creating luminous patterns on the marble floor. Teresa was leading Sophia down the main corridor towards the sensory stimulation room, when she noticed something peculiar. The girl tilted her head slightly, as if reacting to a change in the atmosphere as they passed one of the windows. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible movement, but Teresa, trained to observe details during her years of nursing, didn't miss it. "Is everything okay, Sophia?" she asked naturally without showing surprise. "Yes." The answer came quickly, automatically. Sophia squeezed Teresa's hand more firmly and quickened her pace slightly. In the room prepared for sensory therapy, various materials awaited, fabrics of different textures, instruments that produced varied sounds, aromatic essences. The session proceeded normally, with Sophia exploring objects through touch and smell, identifying sounds and naming sensations. At the end of the activity, while putting away the materials, Teresa deliberately dropped a red rubber ball. The object rolled across the floor until it stopped near Sophia's feet. The girl sitting on the rug turned her head exactly in the direction of the movement. "I think something fell," Sophia commented. Extending her hand to the correct spot, Teresa observed with interest. That wasn't just auditory perception. The ball's trajectory had been practically silent on the soft floor. "It's the red ball," she confirmed, maintaining a casual tone. "You have good hearing, Sophia." The girl found the object and returned it without additional comments, but Teresa had noticed an almost imperceptible furrowing of her eyebrows, as if Sophia was processing something internally. In the following days, Teresa began to make systematic observations, discreetly recording them in a small notebook she kept in her pocket. She noticed that Sophia always turned when the door opened, even before any sound of footsteps. She realized that the girl avoided certain windows during the hours of most intense sun. She observed how she kept her eyes closed for long periods, even when awake, opening them mainly in dimly lit environments. The following Thursday, during breakfast, Teresa noticed that Sophia seemed quieter than usual. "It hurts, doesn't it?" Sophia asked suddenly while drinking her juice. "What hurts, dear?" Teresa approached, concerned. "Your arm." Sophia pointed precisely to Teresa's left forearm. "There's a purple mark there." Teresa looked at her own arm, genuinely surprised. Indeed, there was a bruise where she had hit the corner of the bookshelf the day before. The mark was partially covered by her sleeve, but a piece was visible when she moved. "How do you know that, Sophia?" The girl seemed to realize she had said something unusual. She lowered her face, defensive. "Mrs. Martha always said I had a sixth sense," she murmured, returning her attention to her plate. "I can feel things sometimes." Teresa decided not to press. "It's true, I hit the furniture yesterday." "You are very perceptive." That same afternoon, while Sophia was taking her usual nap, Teresa took the opportunity to get to know the house better. Richard was in New Haven for business meetings, which gave her more freedom to explore. In Sophia's room, she carefully observed the meticulous organization. All objects had a fixed place, which made it easier for the girl to locate them. On the shelves, Braille books were lined up by size. On the dresser, carefully labeled medication bottles. Teresa picked up one of the eye drop bottles. "Apply 3 drops in each eye 3 times a day," read the handwritten label, with Dr. Henry Mendoza's signature. She examined the transparent liquid against the light. As a nurse, she knew various ophthalmic medications, but that formulation was unfamiliar to her. She put the bottle back exactly as it was and continued her exploration. In the closet adjoining the room, in addition to clothes organized by type and color, a curious detail for a supposedly blind child, she found a cardboard box at the bottom of a drawer. Inside, there were empty bottles of similar eye drops, with dates going back up to 5 years. Teresa discreetly photographed the labels with her cell phone. Something about the whole situation began to pique her professional curiosity. The following week, she decided to conduct a simple test. During Sophia's free time after lunch, she took her to the balcony overlooking the sea. "Shall we play a game?" she proposed naturally. Sophia, sitting in her favorite chair with Bernard on her lap, nodded. "What kind of game?" "A guessing game." Teresa took some colored cards she had prepared the night before from her bag. "I'm going to hold something up, and you'll try to say what it is." "But how will I guess if I can't touch it?" Sophia questioned, her voice suddenly tense. "Just try. It's okay to be wrong." Teresa positioned herself against the light, creating a sharp contrast, and held up the first card, a large red circle. What do you think I have in my hand? Sophia remained motionless for a few seconds. Her face turned in Teresa's approximate direction. Then slowly she tilted her head. I don't know. Try to guess. It's a game, remember? It's round? Sophia replied hesitantly, as if testing a hypothesis. Teresa felt a chill down her spine. Very good. How did you know? Sophia hugged the bear tighter. It was a guess. Can I have some water? The attempt to change the subject was obvious, but Teresa respected it. Of course. We'll continue later. While getting water in the kitchen, Teresa mentally reorganized her observations. Sophia's reactions were not consistent with total blindness. There was something more to that child's story. Upon returning to the balcony, she found the girl standing by the balustrade, her face turned towards the setting sun, her eyes half closed, as if absorbing the orange light that bathed the bay. Noticing Teresa's approach, she quickly returned to her chair. Sophia, Teresa sat beside her, handing her the glass of water. Can I tell you a secret? The girl nodded, curious. When I was a nurse, I took care of a girl who had a special eye condition. At first, everyone thought she couldn't see anything. But we discovered she could perceive lights and some shapes. It was a very happy moment when we understood that, because we could help her in a different way. Sophia became very quiet, her fingers nervously clutching the fabric of her dress. I had a baby, Teresa continued, her voice soft. A boy named Gabriel. He got sick and went to heaven. It was the first time she had mentioned her son in months. After that, it became difficult to continue at the hospital. But I didn't lose my desire to care for children. I'm sorry about your baby, Sophia murmured, reaching out to touch Teresa's arm. Thank you. Teresa took a deep breath, holding back emotion. Do you know what I learned from my work? That sometimes people think they know everything about a condition, but each person is unique, and that we should never stop observing, trying to understand better. Sophia remained silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was almost a whisper. Sometimes when the sun is like this, she pointed vaguely to the horizon, I think I see something, like a shimmer. But I haven't told Daddy. He gets sad when I talk about my eyes. Teresa's heart raced. It wasn't just her suspicion. Sophia herself perceived something. Would you like to play some games with me? Special games to find out what your eyes can see. It would be our secret for now. Sophia hesitated, then nodded affirmatively. But Dr. Henry said I'll never see. He's the eye doctor. He knows everything. Doctors know a lot, but they don't know everything. Teresa smiled, stroking the girl's hair. And sometimes miracles happen when we least expect them. That night, after putting Sophia to bed, Teresa sent photos of the eye drop labels to an old colleague from the hospital, Dr. Lucy Fields, a pediatric ophthalmology specialist. Lucy, I need your opinion on this formulation. It's for a private case. Totally confidential. Can we talk? The answer arrived minutes later. Teresa, this is atropine in a very high concentration, with some component I don't recognize. It's definitely not protocol. Where did this come from? Can we talk early tomorrow? Teresa looked out the bedroom window at the moon reflecting on the bay waters. A disturbing hypothesis began to form in her mind. She needed more information before acting. But one thing was already clear. Sophia Vance's eyes deserved a second chance. Chapter 3. Revealing Light. Dr. Lucy Fields' office in downtown Newport Bay was a welcoming space. Ornamental plants softened the clinical environment, and colorful illustrations of children's characters decorated the walls. Teresa waited anxiously, holding a folder with her notes and the photographs of the bottles. Long time no see, friend. Lucy entered hurriedly, her immaculate white coat over her navy blue clothes. She hugged Teresa with genuine affection. I was worried about your message. Thank you for seeing me so early. Teresa adjusted herself in the chair as the doctor rounded the desk to sit down. So, what's it about? That formulation intrigued me. Teresa took a deep breath before starting. I'm working as a companion for a 7-year-old girl, diagnosed with total blindness from birth. She opened the folder, showing her meticulous notes. In recent weeks, I've observed behaviors inconsistent with that diagnosis. What kind of behaviors? Reaction to sudden changes in brightness, visual tracking of moving objects. identification of simple shapes when in high contrast, Teresa enumerated, pointing to her records. And most importantly, the child herself mentioned perceiving brightness. Lucy leaned forward, her professional interest evident. And these eye drops? They've been administered religiously, 3 times a day since she was a baby. I found old bottles dated from different periods, all with the same basic formulation. Teresa showed the photographs. According to your message, they contain atropine in high concentration. Yes, and some other component I didn't immediately identify. Lucy frowned. Atropine dilates the pupil and paralyzes the ciliary muscle, preventing visual accommodation. In normal concentrations, it's used for specific exams or treatments temporarily. I've never seen it prescribed continuously for years, especially for a child. What would happen if these eye drops were discontinued? It depends on the underlying condition of the eyes, Lucy pondered. If there's residual visual capacity, discontinuing them would allow the pupils to return to normal functioning, reacting to light appropriately. But that's just theory without a detailed examination. Teresa bit her lip, hesitant. What if these eye drops were being deliberately used to suppress visual capacity? The silence that followed was heavy. Lucy adjusted her glasses, clearly disturbed by the hypothesis. That would be unethical and criminal, she finally declared. Who prescribes these eye drops? An ophthalmologist named Henry Mendoza. From what I understand, he's been with the girl since she was a baby. Lucy opened her tablet and typed the name. Her expression grew increasingly concerned as she read. Teresa, this doctor had his license revoked in Virginia 3 years ago after complaints of irregular practices. Apparently, he obtained a new license in New York State under questionable circumstances. She rotated the tablet to show the news. There are records of other complaints in different states. Teresa felt a chill run down her spine. What should I do, Lucy? I can't just accuse the doctor or confront the father without concrete evidence. We need a sample of these eye drops for a complete laboratory analysis, Lucy declared. And, if possible, bring the girl in for a discreet examination. The father is extremely protective and rarely allows Sophia to leave the property. I understand the complexity of the situation. Lucy closed the tablet. Get the sample. I have contacts at a reliable lab in Brighton. Meanwhile, if it's safe, you could do a simple test. What kind of test? Tell her skip 1 dose of the eye drops, just 1. Observe the reactions in the following hours. If visual capacity is being suppressed, even skipping a single dose can show perceptible differences in pupillary response. The 2 friends spent the next hour developing a careful plan. When Teresa finally left the office, she carried not only the weight of suspicion, but also the responsibility to act with extreme caution. On the way back to the mansion, she received a message from Richard Vance, informing her that he would need to extend his business trip by 2 more days. It was the perfect opportunity for the initial test. That afternoon, Teresa prepared a special activity for Sophia in the library. They spread out on the Persian rug with various illustrated books, not in Braille, but regular copies with colorful pictures. Today we're going to play a different game, Teresa explained, settling Sophia comfortably among cushions. I'm going to describe illustrations, and you'll imagine what they're like. Then you can create your own stories from those images. Sophia smiled, enthusiastic. It was rare to have activities that stimulated her visual imagination. Can I choose the first book? She asked, her small hands feeling the nearby pile. Of course. Teresa watched as the girl ran her fingers over the books, apparently choosing by the texture of the covers. Sophia selected a hardcover copy with an embossed cover. This one. It was an illustrated edition of American folk tales. Teresa opened the book and began to describe the colorful images of folklore characters. Sophia listened with absolute attention, occasionally tilting her head as if trying to see for herself. At 5 o'clock, the usual time for the evening eye drops, Teresa pretended to administer the medication. With the bottle in hand, she simulated the movement, but without letting any drop fall into the girl's eyes. Done, she said naturally. Now we can continue our storytelling session before dinner. They returned to the library. Gradually, Teresa noticed subtle changes. Sophia's pupils, normally dilated, began to respond slightly to light variations when she adjusted the nearby lamp. The girl blinked more frequently, and eventually brought her hands to her eyes, rubbing them lightly. "Is everything okay?" Teresa asked, attentive. "My eyes feel kind of strange," Sophia replied, confused, as if they're itching inside. "It must be the dry weather," Teresa offered a plausible explanation. "Let's open the window a bit." As she got up to open the window, she deliberately dropped a colored pencil in Sophia's peripheral visual field. The girl immediately turned her face towards the fallen object. "What was that?" she asked, extending her hand with surprising precision to the exact spot where the pencil lay. "A pencil that slipped off the table," Teresa replied casually, while her heart raced. The reaction had been clearly visual. Sophia found the pencil and held it, turning it between her fingers. Suddenly she stopped and frowned. "Teresa," her voice was almost a whisper, "is this pencil green?" Time seemed to freeze. Teresa needed all her professional control to keep her voice steady. "How do you know?" Sophia seemed startled by her own perception. "I don't know. It's like I can feel it. Green is the color of grass, isn't it? It feels fresh." Teresa slowly sat beside the girl. "Sophia, what exactly are you seeing right now?" "I don't know if I'm seeing." Sophia's voice trembled. "But there's brightness. And when I look at different things, the brightness changes, like shadows and lights." She raised her face towards Teresa. "Is this normal?" "Dr. Henry said my eyes don't work. Each person is unique, remember? And eyes are very complex organs." Teresa chose her words carefully. "Sometimes they can function in ways that doctors didn't expect." Sophia remained silent for a few seconds, processing the information. Then unexpectedly, tears began to stream down her face. "I'm scared, Teresa," she confessed. "What if Daddy gets angry? He always gets sad when I talk about seeing things." Teresa hugged the girl tenderly. "Your father loves you more than anything. He just wants you to be happy and healthy. If your eyes are changing, he'll want to know. Promise you'll stay with me when I tell him." "I promise." Teresa felt a lump in her throat. How to explain to a 7-year-old child that her eyes had possibly been prevented from functioning by deliberate intervention? What decisions would need to be made? What painful truths might emerge? So over the next 2 days, Teresa continued applying the empty eye drops, meticulously documenting the changes. Sophia showed greater light sensitivity, could follow movements, distinguished contrast between light and dark, and occasionally identified primary colors in large, nearby objects. On the morning of the 3rd day, Teresa was helping Sophia choose an outfit when they heard the sound of a helicopter approaching. Richard was returning earlier than expected. "Daddy's here!" Sophia exclaimed excitedly. Then suddenly, her expression changed to apprehension. "Teresa, are we going to tell him today? Let's see how he is first. If it's the right time, we'll tell him together." Half an hour later, Richard entered the solarium where Sophia and Teresa were assembling a tactile puzzle. He looked tired but smiled when he saw his daughter. "How's my princess?" He knelt to kiss her forehead. "I missed you." "I missed you too, Daddy." Sophia hugged him tightly. "I have something new to tell you." Richard raised his eyebrows, surprised by her unusual enthusiasm. "Really? What happened?" Sophia hesitated, reaching for Teresa's hand for support. Her companion nodded encouragingly. "I think," Sophia began insecurely. "I think I saw a light." Richard's smile froze. He looked at Teresa with an expression that mixed confusion and suspicion. "What do you mean, Sophia?" "With Teresa, we've been playing games, and sometimes I can see brightness. And yesterday," Sophia paused, gathering courage. "Yesterday I saw Bernard's shadow on the wall." Richard stood up abruptly. "Teresa, can we talk privately?" "Of course, sir." Teresa gently squeezed Sophia's hand before following Richard into the corridor. Once out of the girl's earshot, the entrepreneur turned, his face tense. "What's going on? What kind of games are these?" "Mr. Vance." Teresa kept her voice calm and professional. "I have consistently observed that Sophia exhibits visual reactions to luminous stimuli. I haven't invented anything or induced these perceptions. I merely created a safe environment where she could express what she truly feels." "That's impossible." Richard ran his hand through his hair. "All the exams, all the specialists confirm total blindness. Dr. Henry has been following her case since she was born." "I understand your reaction." Teresa carefully chose her next words. "But as a healthcare professional, My ethical obligation is to report significant changes in Sophia's condition. And I believe, based on my experience, that she possesses some degree of visual perception that was not previously identified, or that may be emerging now. Richard was silent for a moment, absorbing the information. A shadow of doubt crossed his face. What do you suggest we do? An evaluation with another specialist? An independent second opinion? Teresa maintained a neutral tone, avoiding any insinuation about Dr. Henry at that moment. And what about the eye drops? Does Sophia need to continue using them? It was the opening Teresa needed. Actually, sir, I'd like to discuss these medications. As a nurse, I noticed that the formulation is quite unusual for continuous use. Richard frowned. What do you mean? The atropine concentration is exceptionally high. This component dilates the pupils and prevents visual accommodation. In prolonged use, it could theoretically mask or suppress existing visual responses. The entrepreneur visibly paled. Are you suggesting that the treatment prescribed by Dr. Henry could be harming Sophia's vision instead of treating it? I am suggesting that we need to investigate this possibility with another specialist. Teresa remained firm but cautious. I know an excellent ophthalmologist here in Newport, Dr. Lucy Fields. She could examine Sophia and analyze the exact composition of the eye drops. Richard looked out the window, the rough sea in the distance mirroring his own inner turmoil. When he spoke again, his voice was choked. Since Beatrice passed, I've dedicated my life to caring for Sophia. I blindly trusted the doctors, especially Dr. Henry, who has been with us from the beginning. He paused, fighting emotion. If there's the slightest possibility that my daughter can see, even partially, I need to investigate. I understand perfectly, sir. Schedule the appointment with this doctor as soon as possible. Richard turned to face her. And please, Teresa, if you discover anything else relevant about Sophia's condition or these medications, come directly to me. I will. Teresa nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the relief of having managed to open the first door to the truth. May I ask one last thing? Yes. What exactly did Dr. Henry diagnose when Sophia was a baby? Richard took a deep breath, recalling those painful days. Bilateral optic nerve atrophy, irreversible. He said it was congenital, probably genetic. That there was no treatment, only palliative care to prevent dryness and eye infections. Teresa nodded, filing away the information. Thank you for trusting me, sir. I will do everything in my power to help Sophia. When they returned to the solarium, they found the girl standing by the window. Her face turned towards the sun that was breaking through the clouds after a brief rain. A distant rainbow colored the horizon. Daddy? Teresa, Sophia called without turning. There's something colorful out there, isn't there? I can feel something different. Richard and Teresa exchanged a significant look. The entrepreneur walked to his daughter and knelt beside her. It's a rainbow, princess, he said with a choked voice, and I promise we'll do everything possible so that one day you can see it clearly. Chapter 4, Revelations. And threats. Dr. Lucy Fields' office seemed even smaller with Richard Vance's imposing presence. The entrepreneur watched every move the doctor made as she delicately examined Sophia's eyes, who remained seated in the specialized chair, firmly holding her teddy bear. You're doing very well. Sophia, Lucy praised, adjusting the lamp for a softer beam of light. Now I'm going to project some different lights, and you tell me if you notice any change, okay? Yes, doctor, Sophia replied, visibly nervous but cooperative. Teresa remained discreetly by her side, observing both the examination and Richard's reactions. The entrepreneur maintained a serious expression, arms crossed, as if building a physical barrier against what he might discover there. After almost an hour of meticulous tests, including state-of-the-art equipment that Richard had insisted on bringing especially from New Haven, Lucy turned off the machines and smiled at Sophia. You were very brave. You deserve a prize. The doctor opened a drawer and took out a small kaleidoscope. This is a special toy that changes color when we spin it. Want to try? Sophia accepted the object with curiosity. Following the doctor's instructions, she positioned it against the light and slowly rotated the tube. Her reaction was instantaneous, a gasp of surprise followed by a wide smile. I'm seeing. There are colors spinning. Richard uncrossed his arms, approaching his daughter. Are you sure, princess? Yes, daddy. They're like Colourful little stars dancing. Sophia continued spinning the kaleidoscope, enchanted. Lucy made a discreet gesture for the adults to follow her to an adjacent room, while an assistant stayed with Sophia. In the small office, the doctor opened her tablet and displayed images of the newly performed exams. "Mr. Vance, the results are conclusive," Lucy began in a professional yet gentle tone. "Sophia does not have optic nerve atrophy. In fact, her optic nerves are anatomically intact, although with signs of stress from prolonged exposure to pharmacological agents." Richard paled. "How is that possible? All previous diagnoses—" "The exams performed by Dr. Mendoza were manipulated," Lucy interrupted, showing documents on her tablet. "We gained access to the original files through the unified health system. The images he presented to you as Sophia's were, in fact, from another patient with a real degenerative condition." Teresa watched the entrepreneur literally stagger, needing to lean on the table to keep from falling. On his face, a mixture of horror and rage began to form. "And what about the eye drops?" he asked, his voice trembling. Lucy displayed a laboratory report. The analysis confirmed our suspicions. The formula contains atropine in excessive concentration, combined with an experimental anticholinergic agent not approved for human use. In continuous use from early childhood, these components effectively suppressed Sophia's visual capacity, causing induced functional blindness. "My God!" Richard covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. Teresa approached, gently placing a hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Vance, I know this is a terrible shock, but there is positive news here." "Exactly," Lucy confirmed. "With the discontinuation of the eye drops, Sophia's vision is already recovering naturally. We don't expect it to reach 100% immediately, as there was compromised visual development during critical years. But with proper therapy, progressive visual stimulation, and specialized follow-up, she has excellent chances of developing significant functional vision." Richard raised his face, his red eyes fixed on the doctor. "How could someone do this to an innocent child? Why?" "That's a question for the authorities," Lucy replied seriously. "But similar cases, unfortunately, are not unheard of. Some unethical professionals participate in unauthorized trials of experimental compounds, receiving financial compensation from clandestine laboratories." "I'm going to destroy that man," Richard declared, his voice laden with contained anger. "He will pay for every day he stole from my daughter's vision." "Before any action," Teresa cautiously intervened, "our priority must be Sophia's well-being. She will need psychological support to process these changes. And we need a careful plan to introduce visual stimulation gradually." The entrepreneur took a deep breath, nodding. For a few minutes, they discussed the therapeutic plan proposed by Lucy. Sophia would immediately begin a personalized visual stimulation program, with daily sessions and weekly progress evaluations. When they returned to the examination room, they found Sophia still fascinated with the kaleidoscope. "Daddy, did you know there are so many different colors?" she asked animatedly. "There's red, which is warm like the sun, and blue, which looks like the pool water, and yellow, which is like the lemon we have in tea." Richard knelt before his daughter, holding her small hands in his. "Sophia, from today on I will show you all the colors of the world. I promise." On the way back to the mansion, Sophia fell asleep in the back seat of the SUV, exhausted by the emotional intensity of the day. Richard and Teresa spoke in low voices in the front seat. "I've already initiated legal procedures," the entrepreneur informed, his eyes fixed on the winding coastal road. "My legal team is preparing a formal complaint against Dr. Mendoza. I have also requested an in-depth investigation into his ties with pharmaceutical laboratories." "This could become a highly publicized case," Teresa observed. "How do you intend to protect Sophia from media exposure?" Richard sighed heavily. "It's a valid concern. I'm considering temporarily moving to our home in Aspen Ridge during the process. Here it's more secluded, surrounded by nature, ideal for Sophia's recovery." "An excellent idea," Teresa agreed. "The natural environment offers gradual and pleasant visual stimulation, textures, subtle movements of leaves, variations of natural light." When they arrived at the mansion, they were greeted by Mrs. Matilda, visibly agitated. "Sir, we received something disturbing," the housekeeper informed, extending an unmarked envelope. It was hand-delivered by a messenger who refused to identify himself. Richard opened the envelope and paled as he read the contents. He passed the paper to Teresa, who felt a chill as she read the typed message. "Vance, you are meddling with forces you do not understand. Your daughter's treatment is part of a larger program. Back off now, forget the matter, and everyone can go about their lives normally. Continue and you will find that all your money cannot protect what you love most." "An explicit threat," Teresa murmured, horrified. "This only confirms our suspicions." Richard folded the paper carefully. "We are not just dealing with an unethical doctor, but with an organized operation. What do you intend to do?" "Accelerate our move to Aspen Ridge, reinforce security, and push the investigations even harder." The entrepreneur looked at Teresa with determination. "I will not back down, not after discovering what they did to Sophia." The following days were filled with intense activity. Richard activated his private security team, installed advanced surveillance systems on the property, and hired discreet bodyguards to accompany Sophia and Teresa. In parallel, Sophia's visual adaptation progressed remarkably. Without the suppressive eye drops, her ability to distinguish shapes and colors improved daily. Lucy visited the mansion regularly to monitor her development, bringing special materials for visual stimulation. One sunny afternoon, while Teresa was conducting a color identification session in the garden, the phone rang. It was Charles Parker, a trusted investigative journalist whom Richard had contacted to document the case. "Teresa, I've got crucial information," Charles announced, his voice urgent. "Dr. Mendoza is involved with a pharmaceutical company called Neurovision. They've been funding clandestine studies of experimental compounds on vulnerable patients, especially children diagnosed with visual conditions." "My God," Teresa gripped the phone tightly. "How many cases like Sophia's are there?" "At least 12 identified so far in 5 different states. All follow the same pattern: diagnosis of a severe visual condition, continuous treatment with special eye drops, absence of second medical opinions." Charles paused. "But there's more. We found indications that Neurovision is trying to preempt your accusations. They are planting fake news, claiming that Richard was negligent in his daughter's treatment." "A preemptive smear campaign," Teresa concluded, indignant. "Exactly. And there's more. I located one of the lab technicians who analyzed Sophia's eye drops. He received anonymous threats to let it go and is terrified." Teresa felt a shiver. "Charles, be careful. We've also received threats." "I figured. I'm taking extreme precautions, but you need to act fast. Neurovision has powerful connections and is mobilizing resources to suppress the case." After hanging up, Teresa immediately reported the conversation to Richard. The entrepreneur listened attentively, his expression growing graver. "We can't wait any longer," he decided. "We'll move our departure to Aspen Ridge to tomorrow at dawn. And we need to take the case directly to the district attorney's office, with all the evidence we have so far." That night, while helping Sophia get ready for bed, Teresa noticed the girl was unusually quiet. "Is something wrong, dear?" Sophia bit her lip, hesitant. "Teresa, I heard Daddy talking on the phone. Someone wants to hurt us because of my eyes." Teresa sat on the edge of the bed, carefully considering how to respond. "Sophia, some people did wrong things and don't want to be found out. But your father is very strong and is taking all measures to protect us. Is that why we're going to Aspen Ridge tomorrow?" "Yes, and it will be like a special adventure. The house is in the middle of nature, with huge trees and colorful birds. It will be the perfect place for you to practice your vision." Sophia smiled slightly, but soon became serious again. "Teresa, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, dear." "Sometimes I'm scared to see too much." Sophia hugged the bear tightly. "What if I don't like the things I see? What if people don't like me when I can see them?" Teresa felt a lump in her throat. "Sophia, the world is full of beautiful things to see. And as for people, those who truly matter will love you even more when they can share all these beauties with you." "Like you?" "Yes, like me." Teresa stroked the girl's hair. "Now rest. We have a big day ahead of us tomorrow." Later, in the living room, Teresa found Richard reviewing documents with 2 lawyers. When the professionals left, the entrepreneur looked exhausted but determined. "The prosecutors agreed to see us next week," he informed. "We have a solid case. The laboratory evidence, the testimonies of other parents, the falsified records, it's enough to initiate a formal investigation. And what about the threats? We are monitoring them. My security team identified suspicious movements near the property. That's why our departure for Aspen Ridge was moved up to tomorrow at dawn. Teresa nodded, feeling the weight of the situation. Richard, Sophia is sensing the tension. She asked me about the threats. The entrepreneur let out a tired sigh. What did you tell her? The truth in an age-appropriate way. That some people did wrong things and don't want to be found out, but that you are protecting us. Richard smiled sadly. You know, Teresa, all these years I believed I was protecting Sophia by blindly trusting the specialists. I never imagined I would need to protect her precisely from those I placed my trust in. You couldn't have known. I should have questioned more, sought other opinions. Richard shook his head. Beatrice would have done that. She was always the skeptic in the family, the one who asked the difficult questions. Don't blame yourself. You did the best you could under the circumstances. And now you're doing everything right. Richard looked at Teresa with genuine gratitude. I don't know what we would do without you. You were the only one who truly saw beyond the diagnosis, who noticed what no one else did. I just observed carefully. It's what we do for those we love. The words escaped naturally, but as she uttered them, Teresa realized their depth. Indeed, in a few months, Sophia had filled the void left by the loss of her own son. And Richard, well, her feelings for the entrepreneur were also gradually transforming into something deeper than mere professional admiration. The next morning, the convoy of vehicles left the property before sunrise. On the horizon, the first golden lights began to tint the sky, promising a new day. In the back seat of the main car, Sophia kept her face pressed against the window, fascinated by the landscape that was taking shape and color before her developing eyes. Look, Daddy. The sun is rising, she exclaimed enthusiastically. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Richard, in the passenger seat, turned to contemplate not only the sunrise, but mainly his daughter's illuminated face. His eyes met Teresa's, who was driving with concentration, and a knowing smile was exchanged, a silent pact of determination. The road to Aspen Ridge wound through the mountains, each curve bringing them not only closer to a temporary refuge, but also to the truth that, however painful, was finally beginning to reveal itself like the first rays of that new dawn. Chapter 5. The Truth Comes to Light. The house in Aspen Ridge was significantly smaller than the mansion in Newport, but what it lacked in size, it made up for in charm and coziness. Built in the style of old imperial mansions, with a wide veranda circling the entire perimeter, it was strategically positioned atop a hill, surrounded by lush Atlantic rainforest vegetation. Autumn painted the trees with golden and reddish hues, creating a natural spectacle that served as a perfect introduction to the world of colors for Sophia. In the 2 weeks following the move, the girl's adaptation to the new environment and especially to her growing visual capacity was remarkable. What bird is that, Teresa? Sophia asked, pointing to a colorful silhouette that had landed on the feeder specially installed for her to observe the local fauna. It's a 7-colored tanager, Teresa replied, adjusting the special glasses Lucy had prescribed for Sophia. Do you notice how it has several different colors on its body? Yes, blue on its head, green on its wings, red on its belly, Sophia described animatedly, leaning forward in the rocking chair. It's like it couldn't decide what color it wanted to be. Richard watched the scene from the veranda door, a discreet smile on his lips. In recent days, he had reorganized his professional schedule to be more present in his daughter's visual exercises. Seeing her enthusiasm with each new discovery was like balm for his soul tormented by guilt. Sophia is making extraordinary progress, Lucy commented during her weekly visit, as they watched the girl categorize colored cards under the supervision of a visual therapist. Child brain plasticity is truly impressive. Although we lost critical years of development, her brain is compensating rapidly. Will she achieve normal vision? Richard asked, anxiety evident in his voice. Defining normal is complicated in this case, Lucy carefully explained. Sophia will probably always have some limitations, especially in depth perception and acuity for small details, but her functional vision for daily life can reach very satisfactory levels, Perhaps 70 to 80% of what we consider standard. And that's more than enough, Teresa interjected, joining the conversation. The important thing is that she is gaining independence and discovering a new world every day. The Aspen Ridge residence was not only a therapeutic refuge but also an operations center for the unfolding investigation. Richard's office had transformed into a kind of headquarters, with documents methodically organized, timelines on the walls, and frequent meetings with the legal team. That afternoon, after Lucy's departure, Charles Parker arrived for an important meeting. The investigative journalist looked tired, with deep dark circles under his eyes, but his eyes shone with the excitement of someone who had made significant discoveries. "We got the testimony of a former Neurovision employee," he announced as soon as the office door closed. Daniel Taylor worked in the finance department until 6 months ago. He kept parallel records of payments to doctors participating in what they internally called the Selective Vision Program. "What a disturbing name," Teresa commented, sitting beside Richard. "The name is just the tip of the iceberg," Charles continued, opening his laptop. "According to Daniel, Neurovision is just a subsidiary of a larger conglomerate, the Helix Group, which operates in various pharmaceutical segments. They developed experimental compounds for ophthalmological treatments, but faced difficulties in obtaining approval from regulatory bodies due to side effects. So they found an alternative solution," Richard completed bitterly, "testing on vulnerable patients without informed consent." "Exactly. They recruited doctors willing to cooperate, offering substantial benefits, international conferences, equipped laboratories, participation in future profits. Dr. Mendoza was one of the most active in the program." "And how exactly did it work?" Teresa asked. Charles displayed a series of digitized documents. The doctor identified patients with real ophthalmological conditions, or in the case of Sophia and some other children, falsified diagnoses. He prescribed the special treatments supplied directly by Neurovision, bypassing the traditional regulatory system. Periodic reports were sent to the company documenting the effects. "Monstrous," Richard murmured, his voice trembling with indignation. "They used my daughter as a guinea pig without my knowledge. The most serious thing," Charles continued, "is that the data suggests they were perfectly aware of the visual suppressive effects in cases like Sophia's. It wasn't an unexpected side effect, but possibly the very objective of the study in some patients, to evaluate the ability to pharmacologically induce controllable visual impairments." A heavy silence fell over the office. The implications were deeply disturbing. "Any idea of the ultimate purpose of these researches?" Teresa finally asked. Daniel mentioned military and intelligence applications as possible destinations. Compounds that could temporarily suppress or alter vision would have questionable applications. Richard stood up abruptly, walking to the window. "We must deliver all this to the district attorney's office immediately. The hearing is scheduled for the day after tomorrow." "There's one more thing you need to know," Charles hesitated, his face grave. "Neurovision is intensifying its campaign against you. They planted a story that will be aired tomorrow in the Morning Herald, insinuating that you, Richard, neglected conventional treatments for Sophia in favor of controversial alternative therapies." "That's absurd," Richard exclaimed. "It's all part of their strategy to discredit the accusations even before they become public officially," the journalist explained. "Fortunately, I have contacts at the newspaper and managed to get an advance copy of the article. We are preparing a counterattack with concrete evidence." The meeting continued for a few more hours, defining strategies for the presentation to the district attorney's office and for dealing with the inevitable media exposure. When Charles finally left, it was already night. Teresa found Richard on the veranda, silently contemplating the city lights twinkling in the distance. "Sophia is asleep," she informed, joining him in contemplating the landscape. "She asked me to thank you for the telescope. She said she never imagined the stars were so beautiful." A slight smile broke Richard's tense expression. "She's right. There's so much beauty in this world that we take for granted." "Are you worried about the hearing?" "It's not about the outcome itself. The evidence is irrefutable." He turned to face her. "But I fear for Sophia's exposure, for what she will have to process emotionally when she's older and fully understands what happened." "Children are surprisingly resilient," Teresa observed. And Sophia has you. She has an incredible team around her. She has resources that many families in similar situations don't have. And she has you, Richard added, gently holding Teresa's hand. I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us. Teresa felt a warmth rise up her neck. You don't have to thank me. You've also done a lot for me. After I lost Gabriel, I thought I would never find purpose again. Sophia, she brought light back into my life. Their gazes met, laden with unspoken emotions. For a moment it seemed Richard would lean closer, but the sound of the phone broke the spell of the moment. It was Charles, his voice urgent. Richard, Daniel Taylor was found unconscious in his apartment. Apparently an intimidation attempt that got out of control. He's in the hospital but out of danger. My God, Richard paled. And what about the documents? Oh, safe. They're already with the prosecutor. But this shows that the Helix group is desperate. Reinforce security there. After hanging up, Richard immediately contacted the head of the security team, ordering additional measures. The house was already well protected, with cameras, sensors, and guards, but new protocols were implemented for the night. The next morning, Sophia was on the veranda with Teresa, practicing shape identification at different distances, when the helicopter landed in the field near the house. The unscheduled arrival immediately alarmed the security team, but it was soon confirmed to be Prosecutor Marina Evans, who had moved up her visit scheduled for the next day. We need to talk urgently, the prosecutor declared as soon as she entered the house, accompanied by two assistants carrying document briefcases. The situation has evolved dramatically in the last 24 hours. In the office, Marina explained the situation. The attack on Daniel Taylor was just the beginning. We received reports of intimidation against other potential witnesses. In parallel, we identified suspicious movements in Neurovision's and the Helix Group's offshore accounts. They are trying to transfer assets, probably preparing to flee the country. What does this mean for the process? Richard asked. We need to act now. I obtained search and seizure warrants for Neurovision's offices in New York and New Haven, which will be executed later today. But we need your family for formal testimony immediately, not tomorrow. Richard hesitated, looking at Teresa. Sophia is in the middle of her therapeutic routine. No sudden alteration, especially for something potentially stressful like official testimony. I understand your concern, Marina gently interrupted, but we have a specialized team for child testimonies. The environment is fully adapted, and the approach is extremely careful. Furthermore, Sophia's testimony, even if brief, carries immense emotional and legal weight for the case. After consulting Lucy by phone, who advised on how to prepare Sophia for the experience, they decided to proceed with the prosecutor's plan. Teresa spent the next hour explaining to the girl, in age-appropriate language, what would happen. So I'm going to tell other people how my eyes are getting better, Sophia asked, curious. That's right. And how you felt before when you used those eye drops. But don't worry, I'll be with you the whole time. Will Dr. Henry be there? The girl's voice trembled slightly. Teresa stroked her hair. No, dear. You'll only talk to kind people who want to help other children like you. The journey to the district attorney's office was made with a police escort. At the building, they were led through secondary entrances, avoiding the press that was already beginning to gather at the main entrance, alerted by leaks about the case. Sophia's testimony took place in a specially prepared room with toys, drawings on the walls, and a child psychologist, Dr. Claudia, conducting the conversation with extreme delicacy. Richard and Teresa watched on a monitor in an adjacent room, next to Prosecutor Marina. Can you tell me what it was like to use those eye drops, Sophia? Dr. Claudia asked the psychologist. It stung a little, Sophia replied, drawing as she spoke, a technique to reduce anxiety. And then everything was blurry, as if there was a cloud in front of my eyes. Dr. Henry said it was normal, that it was to protect my eyes. And how do you feel now, without the eye drops? Sophia's face lit up. It's like someone opened a window. I can see colors and faces and the trees outside. It's still difficult sometimes. Some things are blurry or shaky. But every day I see a little better. Richard couldn't hold back tears as he listened to his daughter's testimony. Teresa held his hand in silent support. Lucy's technical testimony followed, detailing the medical evidence of induced visual suppression. Charles presented the documents obtained from Daniel and other sources. Richard and Teresa were the last to testify, chronologically recounting the entire discovery. At the end of the day, Marina Evans met with them in her office. She looked exhausted but satisfied. The warrants were successfully executed. We seized entire data servers, physical documentation, medication samples. Agents are currently in 3 different states, conducting synchronized searches. And, she added with a triumphant smile, Henry Mendoza was detained an hour ago attempting to board a flight to Mexico. The news was met with a mixture of relief and vindication. What happens now? Teresa asked. We will formalize the charges tomorrow. Illegal human experimentation, falsification of medical diagnoses, administration of unapproved substances, criminal association, among others. The case is robust, and with the media repercussion that has already begun, it will be impossible to suppress it. Indeed, as they left the building, they were met by a battalion of reporters and cameras. Richard, who initially planned to avoid statements, changed his mind when he saw several families gathered near the journalists, other victims of the scheme, who had come forward after the first leaks of the case. I will make a brief statement, he decided, adjusting his tie. These families need to know they are not alone. Before the cameras, Richard was direct and eloquent. What we discovered is not just an isolated case of medical malpractice, but a systematic scheme of unethical experimentation on vulnerable patients, especially children. My daughter Sophia had years of her visual capacity deliberately suppressed for obscure commercial interests. Today she begins to regain not only her vision, but her right to the truth. We are determined to ensure that all those responsible are held accountable and that no other child goes through what Sophia went through. The next days, headlines featured phrases like pharmaceutical, scandal children, used as guinea pigs, and businessman exposes doctor's scheme that blinded children. The defamatory article Charles had mentioned was completely overshadowed by the truth that was now emerging in all media outlets. Back in Aspen Ridge, while Sophia slept, exhausted from the intense day, Richard and Teresa talked in the library. It's not over yet, he observed, pouring himself a glass of wine. The trial, the continuous exposure, the other families who will need support. But the worst is over, Teresa replied softly. The truth is revealed. Sophia is safe and improving. And you are no longer alone in this fight. Richard contemplated the ruby liquid in his glass. Do you know what Sophia told me on the way back? That she wants to start attending a real school as soon as she's ready. That she wants to meet other children, learn to read like everyone else, have friends. And does that worry you? No, he smiled. It fills me with hope. After everything she's been through, she still looks forward, still wants to expand her world. She's braver than I'll ever be. Her courage comes from you, Teresa observed, approaching him. From the security you provide, from the unconditional love you've always shown. Their gazes met again, and this time there were no interruptions. Richard placed the glass on the table and took Teresa's hands in his. In these past months, you've become an essential part of our lives, not just as Sophia's caregiver, but as someone who brought light back into this family. Just as you noticed what no one else saw in Sophia's eyes, you seemed to see something in me that I myself had forgotten. Teresa felt tears well up, but she didn't hold them back. You helped me find purpose again. Sophia filled a void that I thought would be eternal after losing Gabriel. And you, she hesitated, gathering courage, you showed me that it's possible to start over, even after losing so much. Slowly, naturally, their faces drew closer. The kiss was gentle, laden with contained emotion and silent promises of a shared future. The next morning, Sophia found them on the veranda, having coffee side by side, their hands discreetly intertwined on the table, with the keen perception she had always possessed. Even before partially regaining her sight, the girl smiled. You both seem happy today, she commented, joining them. Richard and Teresa exchanged a knowing look. We are. Princess, Richard confirmed, hugging his daughter. And do you know why? Because we can finally see the path ahead of us clearly. All of us. Sophia nodded wisely, as if perfectly understanding the double meaning of those words. Pointing to the horizon where the rising sun gilded the mountains, she declared with the profound simplicity of children, It's so beautiful when the light finally comes, isn't it? Chapter 6. A New Perspective. 3 years had passed since that morning in Aspen Ridge, when Sophia, Richard, and Teresa contemplated the sunrise together with renewed eyes. Time, that tireless transformer, brought significant changes for everyone. The mansion in Newport Bay, once an isolated refuge from the world, now vibrated with life and movement. The enormous windows that once remained curtained to protect Sophia's sensitive eyes now allowed sunlight to freely bathe the rooms. The walls, previously in neutral tones, displayed colorful paintings, many of them painted by Sophia herself, who had discovered in art a passion and a means of expressing her visual journey. That Saturday morning the house was especially bustling. It marked exactly 3 years since the start of the trial against Neurovision and Dr. Henry Mendoza. To mark the date, not with bitter memories but as a celebration of victory and overcoming, Richard had organized a special gathering. Sophia. "They're arriving!" Teresa called from the veranda, watching the cars ascend the private road. The girl, now 10 years old, ran down the stairs, her curly hair swinging freely. She wore a vibrant yellow dress, her favorite color since she started seeing it, and the colorful framed glasses that had become her trademark. "How many came this time?" she asked animatedly, joining Teresa on the veranda. "At least 5 families," Teresa replied, adjusting a rebellious lock of hair on her stepdaughter. "And Dr. Lucy just called. She's on her way with the results of the latest exams." Sophia's smile brightened even more. Her visual progress continued to surprise specialists. Although she still had some limitations, especially in environments with very intense lighting or in-depth perception for distant objects, her visual capacity had reached a level that initially seemed impossible. Richard emerged from the office, putting his phone in his pocket. At 48, he looked younger than 3 years ago. The lines of permanent worry had softened, replaced by expression lines that denoted more smiles than tension. That was Charles, he informed, referring to the journalist who had become a close family friend. "He's coming for lunch and bringing the first copy of the book. I can't wait to see it," Sophia exclaimed, bouncing with excitement. The book in question, Stolen Visions, the Neurovision Case, was the result of 3 years of meticulous investigation by Charles Parker. It documented not only Sophia's case, but also all the identified victims of the criminal scheme, more than 30 children in 7 different states across the United States. The first visitors began to disembark. They were families with stories similar to Sophia's, children and adolescents, whose visual capacity had been compromised by the treatments prescribed by doctors associated with neurovision. After the exposure of the Vance case, these families had come forward, gradually forming a network of mutual support and advocacy for justice. B. Sophia ran to hug a girl approximately her age. Beatrice Alden, 11 years old, was one of the first victims to be identified after the case came to light. The two had developed a special friendship, united by their shared experience and the process of rediscovering the visual world together. "I brought my drawings to show your art teacher," B announced, displaying a colorful folder. "And Mom let me bring the kittens for you to see." Mrs. Christine, B's mother, approached with a small carrier box. Inside 3 kittens meowed, nestled in a soft blanket. "They're beautiful," Sophia exclaimed, enchanted by the small felines. "One orange, one black and white, and one striped gray. Can I hold the orange one?" Carefully she stroked the kitten, which soon settled on her lap, purring. The scene perfectly captured the spirit of that gathering, the celebration of small everyday joys, of sensory experiences previously denied, of normalcy regained. The house quickly filled with voices and laughter. On the spacious terrace overlooking the sea, tables were set for an outdoor lunch. Children ran through the garden. Teenagers shared school experiences. Parents exchanged information about therapies and educational resources. Marina Evans, the prosecutor responsible for the case, arrived accompanied by her team. In the past 3 years, she had become a fierce advocate for patient rights, especially children, using the Neurovision case as a platform to promote significant legislative changes. The new guidelines for clinical trials were approved yesterday in the Senate, she announced to Richard and Teresa, as she accepted a glass of sparkling wine. The Sophia's Law, as they're calling it, establishes the most rigorous protocols in North America for drug experiments on vulnerable populations. That's wonderful, Teresa replied, moved. During those years, in addition to formalizing her union with Richard, she had partially returned to nursing, but now as a consultant on an ethical vigilance project in clinical research. Sophia will be so proud when she knows. Speaking of her, Marina smiled, watching the girl approach hand in hand with Charles Parker, who had just arrived. It seems the book is finally ready. Sophia ran ahead, carrying a hardcover copy. Mommy, Daddy, look what Uncle Charles brought. Teresa still got emotional when Sophia called her Mommy, a title the girl had started using spontaneously about a year after the formalization of her union with Richard. The legal adoption had been completed the previous year, in an intimate ceremony that officially sealed what their hearts already knew. The book was impressive. On the cover, a gradient from black to the full spectrum of colors symbolized the children's journey from imposed darkness to recovered vision. The title, in golden letters, perfectly captured the essence of the story. There are pictures of my paintings inside. Sophia excitedly leafed through the pages. And look, an interview with me and B. Charles did an extraordinary job, Richard commented, examining the book with evident emotion. The work not only documented the scandal and the trial, but also celebrated the resilience of the children and their families, highlighting the medical and legal advances resulting from the case. The arrival of Lucy Fields, now director of a specialized visual rehabilitation center, completed the circle of key people in that journey. The doctor brought encouraging news about Sophia's latest exams. Neural adaptation continues to be impressive, she explained, showing digital images on her tablet. The synaptic connections in the visual areas of the brain are increasingly robust, and visual acuity has reached 75% of the normal standard, a result we initially considered impossible. Does that mean I can try competitive swimming? Sophia asked, who had developed a passion for the sport in aquatic therapy sessions. Lucy smiled. Definitely. Your residual limitations should not prevent you from practicing practically any normal activity, but we will maintain quarterly consultations as a precaution. Lunch was served in a celebratory atmosphere. In the center of the main table, a cake decorated with the phrase 3 years of new vision awaited dessert. Before cutting it, Richard asked for everyone's attention for a brief speech. 3 years ago, we were at the beginning of a battle that seemed impossible to win. We faced not only an unethical doctor, but a powerful corporation with almost limitless resources. At that moment, each of the families present here was living their particular nightmare. Isolated, unaware that they were not alone. He paused, looking at the attentive faces around him. Today, we celebrate not only the justice achieved, with Dr. Mendoza serving his sentence, and Neurovision dissolved after paying substantial compensation to each affected family. We celebrate above all the community that was born from this adversity, the bonds we formed, the mutual support, the friendships among our children. Teresa, by his side, added, and we celebrate every new dawn that our children can contemplate with their own eyes, every color discovered, every landscape admired, every facial expression recognized, small daily miracles that many take for granted, but which for us represent precious victories. Sophia asked to speak, surprising her parents. Usually shy in public, the girl seemed determined. When I couldn't see properly, I thought the world was small and dark. Then when I started to see, I got scared because everything seemed too big and confusing. But now I've understood something important. She paused, adjusting her glasses. Seeing isn't just with your eyes. It's also with your heart. And even when my eyes weren't working right, my heart always knew how to see the people who truly loved me. An emotional silence followed the girl's simple yet deeply touching words. It was broken by spontaneous applause that soon turned into a warm celebration. The afternoon passed with conversations, games, and improvised presentations by the children. Sophia and Bea had prepared a small exhibition of their drawings and paintings, set up on the side veranda. The vibrant and emotional works visually told each girl's journey of visual rediscovery. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in orange and pink hues over the sea, the families gathered to watch the natural spectacle. For many of those children, including Sophia, each sunset remained a wonderful experience. Never trivialized, this is my favorite time of day. Sophia confided to Teresa as they watched the flaming horizon together. "I like to think the sky is painting a picture just for us." "That's a beautiful way to see it," Teresa replied, hugging her shoulders. "Mommy." Sophia hesitated, biting her lip, a habit she maintained when she was about to ask an important question. "Do you think I'll ever forget what it was like before, when I couldn't see properly?" Teresa considered the question with the care it deserved. "I think some memories become more distant over time, as happens with all of us. But I believe the essence of that experience will always be part of who you are, not as a limitation, but as something that gave you a unique perspective on the world." Sophia nodded, thoughtful. "Sometimes when I want to paint something really important, I close my eyes first. It feels like I sense it better that way before seeing with my eyes." "That's a special gift you have," Teresa observed, "the ability to see beyond the visible." At that moment, Richard joined them, bringing 3 glasses, 2 with champagne and 1 with grape juice for Sophia. "A toast?" he suggested, handing out the drinks. "To what?" Sophia asked curiously. Richard smiled, contemplating the horizon and then the 2 people who had transformed his life. "To the future, to the possibilities that open up when we have the courage to truly look at what is before us. And to the light," Teresa added. "That always finds a way, even in the darkest situations." "And to family," Sophia completed, raising her glass of juice, "that sees with the heart." The glasses clinked softly as the sun finally dipped below the horizon, not as an end, but as a promise of a new dawn. 2 months later, Sophia had a special surprise at school. During art class, her teacher announced that student works had been selected for a special exhibition on overcoming, organized by the Department of Cultural Affairs. Among those chosen was Sophia's series First Look, 5 canvases representing her first visual impressions after the discontinuation of the eye drops. The exhibition, initially planned for a small cultural space, grew to unexpected proportions when a famous New York City art gallery offered to host it. Sophia's story, already nationally known from the court case, gained a new dimension through her artistic expression. On opening night, the gallery was packed. Art critics, journalists, authorities, and especially many of the families who shared similar stories came to honor her. Sophia, wearing a sky-blue dress, the color of the sky that fascinated her so much, timidly circulated among the guests, accompanied by Richard and Teresa. "I'm nervous," she confessed, squeezing her father's hand. "What if people don't understand my paintings?" "Art isn't meant to be understood, Princess," Richard replied softly. "It's meant to be felt. And your paintings make people feel something profound. That's what matters." Specialized critics seemed to agree. Comments on Sophia's works highlighted her unique perspective, the poetic transition from abstract to figurative, and the emotional visual journey captured on the canvases. The most significant moment of the night, however, did not involve critics or authorities. It happened when a group of children from an institute for the visually impaired was guided through the exhibition. Sophia spontaneously offered to accompany them, describing her paintings with words that went beyond colors and shapes, focusing on the sensations and emotions she had tried to capture. "This is the first light I saw clearly," she explained to a girl who carefully touched the edge of the canvas. "It didn't come through my eyes, but through the heart of someone who believed I could see." Teresa, observing the scene from a distance, couldn't hold back tears. Richard hugged her shoulders, equally moved. "She has a special gift," he commented softly. "Not just for painting, but for connecting different worlds." "It's the genuine empathy of someone who has lived in both worlds," Teresa replied. "She understands both the value of sight and the richness of perceptions beyond the visual." At the end of the night, when most guests had already left, the gallery director approached with a surprising proposal: a traveling exhibition of Sophia's works, combined with sensory art workshops for children with different visual abilities. "It would be an opportunity to take your message beyond these walls," the director explained, "to transform your personal experience into inspiration for many." Sophia looked at her parents, her eyes shining with emotion behind her colorful lenses. "Can we?" "The decision is yours," Richard replied. "It's your art, your story." "I want to," the girl declared without hesitation. "I want to show other children that even in darkness there is a possibility of light, and that our eyes are just one of many ways to see the world." Months later, the exhibition Through Sophia's Eyes had already toured 3 cities, always accompanied by inclusive workshops, where children with different visual abilities created art together. The project grew, incorporating other children from the neurovision case like B, who discovered a talent for sculpture, working with 3-dimensional forms that could be appreciated both visually and by touch. In each city visited, new stories emerged. Families with visually impaired children, or children with rare ophthalmological conditions, found in the exhibition not only artistic inspiration, but also information about patient rights, medical advances, and therapeutic resources. What began as a personal expression of a girl gradually transformed into a social movement. At home, life had found a new balance. Richard continued to manage his businesses, but dedicated much more time to his family and the social causes he had embraced after the case. Teresa divided her time between her role as a medical ethics consultant and the coordination of the First Look Foundation, created by the Vance family to support visually impaired children and their families. Sophia, now 11, attended a regular school where she excelled not only in art, but also in natural sciences. She had developed a particular fascination for optics and the study of light. She maintained weekly sessions with Lucy for monitoring and specific exercises, but led an essentially normal life, full of the joys and challenges typical of any preteen. One Sunday afternoon, as the family enjoyed a picnic in the garden, Sophia made an unexpected announcement. "When I grow up, I want to be a doctor. I want to help children like me." Richard and Teresa exchanged surprised but proud glances. "That's a wonderful choice," Teresa replied carefully. "But there's still a lot of time. You can change your mind many times until then." "I know," Sophia smiled, playing with the light filtering through the tree leaves above them, creating dancing patterns on her hands. "But whatever I choose, I want to help people see better, whether with their eyes, with their hearts, or through art." Richard reached out, affectionately ruffling his daughter's hair. "I'm sure you will light the way for many people, Princess. You've already started doing that." That night, after Sophia fell asleep, Richard and Teresa remained on the veranda, contemplating the starry sky, a spectacle that never ceased to amaze them, especially after everything they had lived through. "Sometimes I wonder," Richard reflected, holding Teresa's hand in his, "who really saw whom first in this story? Was it you who saw beyond Sophia's supposed blindness? Or was it she who, even with compromised vision, managed to see the mother you would be for her?" Teresa smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Perhaps it was a mutual recognition. Souls that needed each other finding their way in the darkness. Like guiding stars," Richard completed, pointing to the night sky. "Exactly. And now together, we continue to light each other's paths." The sea breeze carried the scent of garden flowers, mingling with the salty aroma of the ocean. The house, once silent as a mausoleum of lost dreams, now vibrated with the promise of bright days, not because the difficulties had completely disappeared, but because they found the courage to see the light even in the darkest moments. And Sophia, sleeping peacefully in her room decorated with her own colorful creations, dreamed of new paintings to paint, new stories to tell, new horizons to explore. Her world, once limited by the mansion's walls and imposed darkness, now stretched out infinitely like the starry sky, a universe of possibilities illuminated by the love of those who had the courage to see beyond the apparent. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Sophia, Richard, and Teresa has deeply touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about overcoming, love, and new beginnings. Find it by clicking the link to your left. If this narrative stirred emotions in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. We daily bring unique stories that explore the complexity of human life with sensitivity and depth. Share in the comments which moment of this journey touched you most. Was it when Teresa noticed Sophia's first visual reactions? When Richard discovered the truth about the eye drops? Or perhaps when Sophia was finally able to express her visions through art? We await you in the next episode with another moving story that will brighten your day. Until then,